The vulnerable need protection.
We need to separate our political objectives from our humanitarian and moral responsibility. Regardless of the political positions that the government impose, we have to provide those children their basic human rights. It's international law.
The Iraqis must either rise up in revolt, a suicidal prospect as they've seen, or suffer deprivation, disease, chaos, indefinitely.
It'd be very difficult to move against Saddam anyway. They do feel fear about what would happen if his government collapsed, because what they fear most of all, I think, is civil war and anarchy, and they had a taste of that.
The peace becomes a war of attrition that may again politicize the next generation. In their classrooms, on their television, war and fear consume them.
In describing the war, the kids would generally describe it as being the Bush War rather than the Gulf War. And they actually believed that the President of the United States was sitting as pilot in one of these planes flying around Kuwait and Iraq and dropping bombs.
In this war, both sides found the perfect blindfold: television. A controlled media has no message. Two veteran war correspondents.
Looking back on the wars that I've written about, I would think that this was the worst covered war since the First World War.
There was no military information they couldn't have, except, as I discovered when I started to ask it, about death.
So there could be no body counts in this war, and there could be no blood and guts, and there could be no horrific scenes.
It allowed the military and the politicians to sell and market war as something that did not involve death, but as a political option.
There could be no distressed civilians, and there could be no death on screen.
Ultimately, television hid death very successfully.
What triggered it all? The arms proliferation remains part of the fog of war. Kuwait, many months after the war, its fires rage on. Its sands still hide more than 500,000 mines. A war in which the worst horrors, chemical, nuclear, weren't used, but were there. The need to destroy these weapons facilities had triggered a major war, but not even the war would do it. The UN now has to. The UN field teams sent to disarm Iraq find its nuclear weapons program more advanced than anyone had predicted. The first team leader, David Kay.
And the Iraqi nuclear program is truly an immense undertaking. Every time I went back, I was impressed, shocked, amazed. They were probably about 18 months away from having enough material for a crude weapon.
Shortly before invading Kuwait, Saddam flaunts what he calls the nuclear trigger, imported technology. He has spent an entire decade on this. A military expert on the astonishing aid Saddam received.
We're talking of lines of credit of something like $300 billion being extended out over a 10-year period. The more high technology, the more advanced weapons were supplied by the West. The basic infrastructures came from Eastern Bloc countries.
The Kuwait connection, like a roll call of the United Nations.
Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Poland, South Africa, Brazil, China, Korea, Soviet Union, all supplying in weapons.
Locating and destroying Saddam's nuclear facilities comes to involve 1,000 UN inspectors. It takes years to uncover the true extent of the program.
We found a large number of chemical weapons. We found something like 50,000 pieces of munition filled with chemical agents, mostly mustard gas, nerve agents, in the form of artillery, rockets, bombs. They had something like 115 Scud-related missiles when the war ended, unharmed.
And the search by UN helicopter teams goes on. So many weapons that war became both inevitable and ineffective. The stunning conclusion. The 40 days of non-stop bombing essentially did little.
The bombing, I guess, was effective to some degree. It destroyed important production capabilities. But even in that field, the Commission has carried out the more thorough destruction of Iraq's production capabilities.
What makes Iraq unique is it was a scary situation. If they had not attacked Kuwait in 1990, but say it waited till 1993 or 94, the international community would have found itself in a far more difficult situation.
Weapons proliferation becomes an even greater threat. High-tech war becomes self-perpetuating. Historian Philip Knightley.
You couldn't get better publicity if you're an arms dealer than what was shown on television screens throughout the world. And as a result of this, arms sales to the area of soared.
One of the most important necessary components in any international peace order to get those weapons under control and get this and stop this proliferation and wind it back.
I'll be firing in about 10 seconds. Roger.
High-tech war out of control. After the Gulf War, a grim statistic. 1 in 4 of the U.S. dead was killed by their own side. It's called friendly fire.
Okay. Roger. This is Starward. Are you ready, lined up? You're ready. Do them.
2 Americans died in this incident, one of many like it.
Now let's take a look at the second one. Gunfighter. This bud's for you. Uh-oh.
The war has a clear enough target, Saddam. But he alone is not the cause of war. He is the consequence of so much misuse of arms.
We're reporting that maybe friendly vehicles may have been hit over. What? Roger, I was afraid of that. Ceasefire, ceasefire.
When Anatomy of a War returns, the chaotic and dangerous future of the Middle East. The Arab poor, the vast majority of the 200 million Arabs, become the post-war victims. The masses whom Saddam professed to champion become the casualties of his actions. The new order, self-security at any price, is stated bluntly by Prince Bandar.
Leaders will be judged of first what they do for their people, and second what they do to the rest. Because if I can't help my people, how can I help you? This is basically the new reality.
The new reality is the new vacuum. Years into the peace, U.S. jets remain in the Gulf. But the superpower system has changed. The presence of a single dominant foreign power brings unease. Egypt's President Mubarak.
The new world order, they have only one superpower, no other power against it. Of course, if this superpower used its power in the wrong way, it would be a disaster.
The Arabs are back to seeking an Arab solution, not yet knowing what it is, but knowing there isn't much time. Palestinian commentator Rami Khouri.
And in 10 years, when the Egyptians don't have water and food and jobs enough for their people, and they get on boats and invade Saudi Arabia, then what's the West going to do? 500,000 troops won't be enough. You'll have to send 4 or 5 million. The regimes like the Iraqi regime have no future in the Arab world. Saddam Hussein is a symptom and a consequence of modern Arab history. individuals riding white horses, promising liberation and return to dignity. He is a symptom of mass disenchantment, national fragmentation.
The Arabs have not come out as victorious, not in a bloc, nor as individuals.
Nothing has really changed except America as, you know, top in the world. That stature is very much. That's all that's happened. And there is no new world.
But let's be clear, this has not altered America's place in the world radically. It has not altered the Middle East. It's restored the status quo.
Kuwait, now said to symbolize global freedom, also holds an election, its first in 6 years. Out of its 600,000 citizens, only 81,000 are eligible to vote.
When you witness all of that and try to reflect back on the Gulf War, the Gulf War looks more and more like a sideshow, like an interlude, like an intermission, like an irrelevancy.
The bottom line is, too much mess got left in the room after the party, and nobody seems to want to remember the night before.
And soon after, America votes. In a year and a half, George Bush's victory over Saddam is almost forgotten, as his indecisive domestic policies make him a one-term president. Baghdad, of course, sees his loss as a vindication, though the dancing in the streets is muted. The war has cost them deeply. For the Allies, nothing has changed in the leadership of Iraq. The final irony is expressed by the Kuwaiti ambassador.
Who's going to replace it now? Many people say, well, we cannot get worse than Saddam Hussein. We've said that before.
The Gulf War, perhaps aptly named, a paradox. An age of instant communication, yet no dialogue. A media-fought war. A victory technologically predetermined for one side, mythologically for the other. It became television theater with all the world as witness, and set the stage for a war of the 90s. The makings of it blurred. The speed of it, never to be forgotten. Since President Clinton has taken office, the Iraqi problem, or probably more accurately put, the Saddam problem, has not gone away. Clinton's most serious action was taken last summer when he sent cruise missiles crashing into a downtown Baghdad intelligence center. Ironically, it was in retaliation for a failed attempt on the life of former President Bush, an attempt said to have been plotted by the Iraqi government. Is there a permanent solution? Many feel an Iraq without a President Saddam Hussein would do the trick, but there are others